We're going to talk Italian-American boxing, Mike, aren't we? And for obvious reasons, this film does hold a particular spell for that community.
Yes, LaMotta's time was a golden era for Italian-Americans. Men like Carmen Basilio, Rocky Graziano and the great heavyweight Rocky Marciano. As kids, they would box in the streets to entertain the local communities, and their families were poor. Boxing was seen as a way out of poverty for these sons of the first Italian immigrants to the US. But that kind of influence is fading, and Paulie Malignaggi, who you've mentioned, is the latest and might well be the last world champion from that kind of background for a while. Malignaggi, well known to British boxing fans, is the man who's been beaten in the past couple of years by Ricky Hatton and by Amir Khan, and I met up with him at Gleason's in Brooklyn, where Robert De Niro trained for a year alongside Jake LaMotta in the making of the film. And Malignaggi was only just born when the film was released, but it had a huge effect on him as he was growing up.
A lot of things go into that movie for me. You know, obviously it's a boxing film, so me being a professional fighter, it's gonna grip me. But also, you know, it's a true story about an Italian-American fighter. You know, so a lot of similarities to me too. But you know, one thing I can say myself about Italian-Americans, being that I am one, is we're characters. You know, so a lot of the stuff in the movie is a little bit comical to me, even though it's not comedy. You know, just the way Jake LaMotta carries himself and portrays himself, and the role Robert De Niro played. You know, so it's all in all, definitely one of my all-time favorite movies.
You're laughing as you say that, so you identify as somebody with an Italian-American background with some of what was going on.
Yeah, you know, just like you know, Italian Americans carry themselves a little bit grumpy sometimes, and a little bit, you know, maybe not so much myself. I can be grumpy, don't get me wrong, but I'm more happy-go-lucky. But I see Jake, like in the beginning, when he's telling them to put his robe on right after the fight, you know, after the opening bout in the movie, and he's saying it all mad, like, put my robe on right. So, you know, like little things like that really crack me up. Like, you know, there's a scene where the brawl happened inside the restaurant when he was looking at the girl that would become his future wife, and a brawl happens, and they're throwing everyone out, and Jake just happens to be standing outside, and a guy ends up like bumping into him as he's being thrown out, so Jake grabs him by the neck and throws him out too. You know, like, so just little scenes like that really just crack me up. It's so funny.
So as a fighter, how close did De Niro get to what it is?
I think De Niro did a good job. You know, you have to understand it was also 1980, so they probably filmed it in 78, 79. So, you know, back then, you know, I think the actors that portray fighters today do a little bit better job portraying fighters as far as the fight scenes. But I don't really think the movie was about the fight scenes so much as it was just about the story in itself and the compellingness of it, you know. So when that is concerned, I mean, Robert De Niro gets an A++ job, you know, just 100% immaculate, magnificent job, you know. And you know, he really pulls you in. The story pulls you in and of itself. And another reason why it's actually special to me is Jake LaMotta won his world title the same night I won my world title on the calendar, June 16th. And obviously his was 1950, I think, but you know, mine was 2007. But still, it was just a funny coincidence when I ended up winning a championship. I won it the same night he did.
So you're saying that in your view the fight scenes weren't that authentic?
They weren't great. I mean, like the Ray Robinson LaMotta fight, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, where in the movie it shows just Jake just standing there and just letting Robinson hit him, and he's on the
with his arms down.
Yeah. You know, I wound up seeing that fight on Classic Sport, ESPN Classic, one night, and although Jake may have been letting Sugar Ray hit him, and he may have been wanting to see if he could get him down, it wasn't exactly, say, right on the ropes and just him taking it. He was kind of getting mowed all over the ring, you know, like he was taking a shot and kind of stumbling and you know, taking more shots, and he, you know, when you see it the way it really went, I don't know if he was hurt and he wasn't responding, or if he really was that proudful and didn't want to respond just to see if he could go down or not, you know. But in the movie it shows authentically that he's just standing there like, hit me, while in real live action he was you know, getting moved by the shots. You know, he wasn't just in one spot. He would get hit. Robinson followed him, and he kept hitting him until the referee jumped in. So, you know, in that case, I mean, I guess it's just to make the story a little better and whatnot. But overall, I mean, although the fight scenes weren't super great, they still tell the story. You know, You have the Lauren Dothio fight where he comes back in the last round and stops him. You have, you know, you have so many fights in there that, you know, are documented in history anyway. You know, so I'm glad that they actually told the story. You know, and in that way, the story is great.
And Scorsese told us that he wanted to reflect in that opening scene where only De Niro stroke LaMotta is envisioned, the loneliness of a professional fighter. Do you understand that?
Yeah, that's a powerful scene. That's a powerful scene, and really Scorsese is. It shows you intellectually how deep he really gets and when he makes his movies, because that really is powerful when you really look deep into it like that. And it's true. It's true. You know, as a professional fighter, there's things you enjoy and there's things you dread, you know, and just like in anything in life, you know, but, you know, obviously we fight because we want to make a good living for ourselves. We fight to get to a better future and make a better life for ourselves. And don't get me wrong, you enjoy hearing the roar of the crowd. You enjoy being the center of attention. You enjoy people coming up to you and saying, "Oh, great fight. You're a good fighter." Or you're so-and-so. Wow, I've seen you fight. You know, you enjoy all that, obviously. But on the flip side, you know, a lot of it you realize is just you're a commercial. You're a product, you know? And I tell my friends and my family, nothing more like fight week where you feel more like a product, where you get tossed and turned around. You have to make this appearance here, you have to do this interview here, you have to be here, then you have to be here, then you have to be here, and then you have to fight. You're just a product, you know? And don't get me wrong, sometimes it's fun being a product. When you're the center of attention, everybody's giving you a lot of love, it's fun being a product. But when you go to sleep at night and you put your head on the pillow and you say, wow, how much of this is real and how much of this is because I'm a product? And that way, although you love it, it gets lonely too.
In that sense then, you really have to want to do it. And is that why there are so few Italian Americans involved now? Because they've moved on and there's not the hardship that was around in the days of LaMotta and Basilio, who were the sons of the first immigrants.
Yes, a lot of that. You know, somebody made a joke to me one time, an Italian person, and obviously this is only a joke that Italian people can make because it's a little bit stereotypical, but I'm Italian, so I can say it. But they said the pizza business started doing good in America, you know, and then you know, Italians started getting into stuff like that, you know, and you know, there was no need to fight, you know, there was you can make money doing other things. Italian people, you know, again, I'm Italian, my family, I'm first generation American, I lived in Italy. And one thing I can tell you about Italians, especially the ones that move, maybe not so much the ones in Italy. The ones in Italy have a pretty laid-back attitude, but Italians that have been immigrants and have moved to America or have moved to other countries, those are the ones that have done that because they have been go-getters. They have been people that wanted to make a better life for themselves. You know, you don't leave your home country unless you're willing to really put your foot down and do something strong, you know? And so Italian immigrants have always been the kind of people that, you know, want to work hard and want to succeed and want to make a better life for themselves and their future generations. And so they did that, you know, they did that. And so a lot of the immigrants from Italy have now stopped coming over to the United States, and the Italians in the United States are now second, third, and fourth generation Italians, and they're established, you know, they're established in their workplaces, they're established within every industry, not just the fight industry. And so they've kind of gotten away from fighting, you know, because fighting is a tough way to make a living, and if you can do it intellectually, you can do it using your brain, and you can do it with any other strength you might have, that's where they've gone to do. And Italian Americans have really established themselves in the U.S. culture, especially on the East Coast, and you don't see them fighting anymore.
So do you think you might be the last world champion from that kind of background?
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, and I'm not saying it to try to make myself feel special, because I would love nothing more than to see another Italian American win a championship or become a championship level fighter or an Italian fighter or whatnot. But I remember as I was coming up, Arturo Gatti was my favorite, and he was Italian Canadian, but the same concept. His family left Italy, but they moved to Canada instead of the United States, and you know, tried to make a better life for themselves. I looked at Arturo as he was my hero when I started boxing, and then growing up, you know, he was the one Italian guy that really stuck out. And you know, I try to follow in the footsteps and try to make a championship level fighter out of myself, you know. And I don't see anyone else coming up behind me. By this point in Arturo's career, I was already starting to make my marks. You know, when Arturo was 30 years old, I was a pro already, and I was an undefeated prospect. And I look behind me, and there's no Italians in sight on that same kind of path, you know. And you know, it's I'm not gonna say it's sad, because at the same time, again, that means maybe Italian Americans are making a good life for themselves, you know. As much as I love to compete, and I love a lot of things about boxing, I would never make a son of mine box. You know, if I had a son, I would never make him box. It's just the business is too dreadful, you know. It's the dreadful, disgusting business, you know.
I think sports fans, rather than people with the in-depth boxing knowledge that you have, Mike, would be surprised about his answer that he thinks, Paulie Malignaggi, that he thinks he's going to be the last Italian-American world champion.
Yeah, but I think he explained the reasons there, that if you look at what's happening in the Italian-American community in the United States, then a lot has changed in the last 30 years since the film was made. Indeed, throughout the last century, some 4 million Italians made their way over to the States between 1880 and 1915, I think it was. And so for a long time, they were right at the bottom of the ladder of society. But by the time the film was made in 1980, and even more so now, they belong in the top half. And boxing throughout history and still to today has drawn its people from the bottom half. The reason there were so many Italian Americans at the time, LaMotta and Graziano, Marciano, Basilio, the people that I've mentioned, is because their families were living, in many cases, in dire poverty. They were the sons of those first immigrants. And that's been a story of boxing, and it's been the story of that northeastern corner of the United States and much of the rest of the United States as well, in that boxing has been a haven for these immigrants, for these minorities. There's a terrific book that was written about 10 years ago called When Boxing Was a Jewish Sport. And, you know, it went from the Jews to the Italians, the Irish were involved as well, and then the blacks. But even the blacks are fading now because they're finding better opportunities in basketball and in American football. So it's now really the scene of Hispanics and, to a lesser extent, Eastern European boxers.
Because Malignaggi said there that there was an interesting quote about they're established now. As a community, I'm assuming he's me, and also as individual families, they are established now, and their brains, therefore, will allow them to do other things rather than fight.
Yes, because their children are now getting a better education, just as Paulie Malignaggi, having gone through what he's been through, and you might think, well, he's a lot younger than Jake LaMotta, so why is he involved in boxing? Well, he is like LaMotta in that he's the son of an immigrant. His dad happened to come to the States later than LaMotta's dad did. But it's that once they've been in the ring and been through a career like that, it's actually rare for a fighter to want his son to go through the same thing, especially as a professional boxer, and especially when there are other opportunities for them, in particular in education, and they can make a better life for themselves outside the ring. Whereas for the likes of LaMotta and those others that I've mentioned, the best possible life for them was in the ring.